Right, welcome everyone. This is the presentation inside Formula One game development and specifically about the dynamic objectives feature. So a little bit about me. I'm Paul Stefanescu. I'm a gameplay software engineer. I graduated the computer science course at the University of Manchester in 2021, so not that long ago. I've been working on the Formula One game franchise for over 3 years. And I've also worked on the remaster of Mafia 1 and the Callisto Protocol during my internship slash placement year at D3T. And I've included this photo of me. This is a collectible that you can get in Mafia 2. And I just thought, I kind of wanted to highlight how cool it can be to have an internship, because I got immortalized in a video game and I haven't even graduated uni. I was just lucky to be there at the right time. In terms of the team, I've developed this feature alongside Steve Embling and Adam Gross on design and Hussein Patel on UI code. And I should mention Steve here has actually graduated staffs, his master's here, so it's nice to see him, being shouted out here. All right, what will we cover today? So I'll walk you through dynamic objectives and how they work, the challenges we faced and how we address them, and sort of what to keep in mind when implementing new features. These are just like some tips that I learned over the course of my career after graduation. All right, so very quick intro about the game. We've been making the Formula One video game series here at Codemasters since 2009 in our Birmingham and Southam offices. We use our proprietary engine, the Ego engine, and the code is written in C++. So working in the Ego engine, it's like working in Unreal or Unity, but you just can't Google most compilation errors. You just have to figure it out yourself. And we first introduced dynamic objectives in F1 24, and they're still a core part of the career mode in F1 25, our latest game. All right, but what are dynamic objectives? So I'll just start by saying that driving a Formula One car is challenging, especially in a race with 19 other drivers. When I play the game, I do a lot of going off track, bumping into people and getting penalized for it, or just, hitting people, losing my front wing and having to, go and do a pit stop to replace it. So we aim to help players like myself improve by creating a dynamic but lightweight system that analyzes player actions, the current state of the game, and offers tailored advice. So instead of generic tips like, watch your tires or manage your fuel in a loading screen before the race, our system provides a short, real-time goal similar to how a lead engineer gives targets to the drivers on track. So in my scenario, what I would get is, let's say, an objective to avoid leaving the circuit, avoiding notable collisions, or just to avoid damaging my front wing. Onto their implementation, but first of all, I want to give a disclaimer. Whilst we could have done some very cool things with AI and machine learning, we're faced with the constraints of having an annual release cycle. So we opted for a handcrafted approach instead. Steve and Aaron, the designers, crafted 20 distinct objectives using AI models and player behavior data to ensure they were both challenging and achievable. So in terms of the base structure, we have the task and associated logic, in this case, achieve a lap time, the target, so a lap time of 1:37, the progress, so how long until the player can achieve the objective or how far away they are from it, and finally the duration. And objectives are usually between like a lap and 8 laps long, depending on race distance. I think there are two main classes for the system. So you have the dynamic objective class, and I've included like a very simple pseudocode version of it. And you have basic stuff like the status, the data, functions that every objective would need to activate to determine a target, update them, accesses, helper functions, and so on. And we have the component, which is actually what manages, creates, destroys all of the objectives, and also handles the trigger logic, like when to trigger them, and manages the criteria list, which helps determine what the most relevant one is. More on that later. Okay, target determination. Since the objectives are handcrafted by designers, they each have a formula behind them to determine an appropriate target for the player. For example, the achieve lap time objective, which I've shown earlier, looks at factors like AI difficulty, the player's car characteristics, so like mass, grip, R&D development, and uses that data to estimate a lap time. And here I have one tip, and that is teamwork makes the dream work. And as cheesy as that sounds, it's true, because we really had to hone these formulas down. And I feel like we only got to such a good place because I sat side by side with the designers countless times, and we iterated and tried different things until we found the ones that work. I couldn't have done it myself. They couldn't have done it on their own. As I was implementing these, I had two key aspects in mind. The first one is modularity. So the component can be added on any game mode if we wanted to in the future. And objectives can be added or removed as well. And this can be done by any programmer / designer, not just me, because I've made the code to be like self-explanatory, and I've also wrote documentation for it. If you have scope, you should try to modularize your code so that it can be easily expanded in the future. And the second thing is robustness. The code handles errors if other systems are malfunctioning. So in our debug builds, if something goes wrong, the code asserts, it will let us know, hey, this is bad, something happened, but it will not crash the game. So that lets us keep testing, and if somehow a bug reaches the live game, it won't crash. Players can still play even if something goes wrong. And I've included this picture. I'm sure some of you were affected this Monday by the AWS outage where it felt like half the internet was down. That is exactly the kind of thing I tried to avoid. Right, lightweight objectives. So I think I mentioned this earlier. We needed to make the objectives and the relevance criteria lightweight. In our game, we have this cool little feature called the flashback system, where you drive around the track and oops, you crashed into something or whatever, and you can literally defy the laws of physics by defying time, by rewinding time. I know, a very realistic game. But yeah, this is great as a player, but not that nice as a developer, because it means that whatever you do on track, you need to make sure that it works with flashbacks. So just quickly, how the system works is basically we serialize data every frame. The status, the variables of very different objects. And if you flash back, we progressively deserialize that buffer to the point where you're at, and then we try to reconstruct everything with the data at hand. So you need to make sure whatever you're doing is lightweight, so that works. And on top of that, you have so many systems using this. You need to manage your memory very well. Quickly on rewards, so players receive a small bonus to the appropriate driver rating when completing an objective, and some specialist experience, which is like another feature of the career mode. But overall, very small, and players don't get penalized for missing one or failing one. But because I mentioned objectives, I want to talk about another problem which we face, which is balancing realism and gamification. So, we really like this feature because we think that it actually improves the game. We've been playing the same career mode for so long. This kind of shakes things up, especially in the middle of the race. But other people are not really fans of that. They want a more realistic experience. They don't care about arcade elements. They just want to race, an F1 race, and that's it. And we had to account for that. We had to, it was a decision we made very early on. Let's not make them too important. They can enhance the experience if you enjoy them in the middle of the race, but if you dislike them, you can just ignore them and you won't get penalized for it. And yeah, this tip I have is be willing to give up on completed work. So kind of related to this, we had a few objectives that we worked on, we completed them, and we realized they weren't really that fun, or some of them were just too unrealistic. Like, sure, they were fun, but it didn't make sense, so to say, in universe. So, and we could only tell once we completed them. So we had to make the decision that, hey, we should just cut them, even if we spend this time working on them. Quickly on scheduling. So the schedule and the trigger points for these objectives are determined at the start of the race according to the race length and a bit of randomness for variety. We aim for one objective in a 5-lap race and a max of 3 objectives in a 50+ lap race. The specific timing and our objectives are, this design in such a way so you still can get some variety of it, but they don't show up too often. And because I mentioned scheduling, so the sport in real life can have a lot of disruptions. F1 fans out there, you're watching this really cool race. It's amazing. It's all getting so intense, and then somebody crashes, the safety car goes out, and now you're just watching drivers drive at slow speed, no overtaking. It's boring. But we had to handle these scenarios very early on. Like we knew that this was something that we had to do. So what we do, we postpone an objective. We didn't want to make the player feel like they failed it in any way, and then we tried to reschedule them as best as we can. But one tip I have here is plan for edge cases early. Because I knew about this from the very beginning, I managed to design and plan my code structure to account for it, because if it came way later in development, I think it would have caused a lot of issues. Okay, a lot of these objectives actually are based on our AI data. We have a lot of data for our AI, how they're supposed to drive around, the top speeds, the expected lap times, tire wear, etc. It's all tied to AI difficulty. The higher the difficulty, the better the AI drives, and so on. And I designed the objectives to tie in with difficulty, because hey, if your difficulty is high, or you can manage to drive at that difficulty, then they should be harder. But the problem we faced is a lot of players just want to play an easy game. They want to be first, and they set their difficulty very low. But then they complain, hey, why am I getting this very easy objective? It's boring. I can complete it. I don't even have to think about it. It's like, it's something that we had to concede, because if you're setting a lower difficulty, that's what you're going to get. And if you want harder objectives, just increase your difficulty. And we just had to be, okay with that. And one tip here is user error is inevitable, but you should still try to manage it, obviously. But we can't help that players are setting their difficulty too low. We didn't think it was worth devising some sort of system to mitigating. It would be just so much work, and it really is just you should just change the setting. So some objectives in the game can have some very interesting effects on player perception and team dynamics. And here I have a video from one of the biggest Formula One, like the video game YouTubers, where he encounters one of these objectives, and I kind of found his reaction hilarious, and I wanted to include it.
He is slow. We're trying to give him room still and be a respectful teammate, but we are going to get that overtake and get up into first place.
That's Lando behind. They're faster than you, mate. They're faster than you, so let them through, please.
What?
They're faster than you. They're faster than you.
Oh my God. I cannot believe what I'm seeing in front of my eyes.
Right, so that was the team orders objective. You have to let your teammate pass you. This is something that happens in real life, and whenever it happens, there's a lot of drama, because F1 drivers have huge egos, and they always want to be first. They don't want to let anyone pass them. And when they get an order from the team, they have to face this decision: do I do it because I'm supposed to listen to my team, my engineer, and so on, or is my ego more important? All right, so how do we determine which objectives to trigger? We came up with this concept called relevance criteria. So each criterion is a custom object in our code that evaluates specific race data, like your position on the leaderboard, engine temperature, tire wear, etc. We convert all of this data, depending on the criterion, into a single number. And then we input that function into one of these graphs. So like the x-axis would be what you put in, and then you get the y, which is the relevance score. And I've given 2 examples here. The first one is the cars in proximity relevance graph, which is basically if you don't have cars like in front or behind you, you have some space within, that's a good time to set a good lap time. So we give you the achieve a lap time objective because, you're on your own, you don't have to focus on overtaking or being overtaken. It's a good time. Maybe you set the fastest lap. And the other one is the teammate behind one. I've just shown it in the video. It's basically if your teammate is behind you, the closer he is, the more relevant the objective is. And I'm not sure if you can see on these graphs, but the max Y value, the max relevance score, we've played around with that to make some objectives more or less likely to trigger. Okay, so we have the criteria. What we do with it is the system keeps a sorted list of criteria based on their relevance. So when it's time to assign an objective, the most relevant one is chosen, the one at the top of the list. If you have multiple that have the same relevance, we just pick one at random. And the nice thing about this is in a live build, we don't have to constantly update this list because we only trigger like, let's say 2-3 objectives in a race. So some things will track data continuously, but most of them we just evaluate when we want to trigger an objective. However, during testing, this list does update continuously because it gives us the chance to see if whatever's happening in the race is actually displayed here. The values work as we expect them to. And here I want to highlight a very important thing, which is make debug tools. Programmers, make sure you give designers the right tools to be able to help you and understand how the code you wrote works, and for them to be able to, to debug and test things on their own, because they might figure out like, hey, something about my design is a bit wrong. This code works well, but the numbers that I'm seeing are not the ones I expected when I was, when they're just thinking about it. And designers, please ask your programmers for nice tools. You should be involved in the technical development part of your feature. You need to understand what's going on, and it's very conducive to good teamwork. Right, and I have some scenario examples. So this one is a bumpy start. I knocked into a lot of people. I went off the track. It was honestly terrible driving for me. So what I might get is, one of the off-track objectives, like don't go off track, or maybe just don't hit people, because again, I have car collisions count and front wing damage quite high as well. So it depends what happens in the race after that. And then I also have a battle for position mid-race. So if I recall correctly, in this scenario, I had Alonso right behind me trying to overtake me. That's why the top criterion over there is driver close behind. It has a very high relevance because he was very close trying to overtake me. But also there's the low fuel usage. The reason why he was trying to overtake me, because I wasn't managing my fuel correctly. I was not using it enough. So I had a lot of it in my tank, which meant that the car was slow. That's why Alonso was trying to, overtake me. And so, I would probably get either, trying to not be overtaken by Alonso or just managing my fuel better, an objective for that. But we faced the challenge with repetitive objectives due to consistent player behavior. So it turns out players don't change their driving style that often or quickly at all. Even if the track changes, they end up driving similarly, making the same mistakes, and basically they have the same things to improve, which makes sense. But when you're getting the same objective over and over again, it's just boring, and nobody wants that. So we use the oldest trick in the book, which is cooldowns. If you get an objective during a race, you can't get it again that race, and we lower its relevance for subsequent races. And I have some analytics data over here, which I kind of pulled to prove my point that they're quite evenly spread out. These are the dynamic objectives triggered in a 30-day period after the release of F1 24. As you can see here, bear with me, it's a bit hard to read, but that is the achieve lap time objective, our most common objective, which we kind of wanted. It's just set a good lap time, and most players would probably get this one. The next ones are avoid front wing damage or overtake a driver. Again, I guess when it comes to being more aggressive, But then the rest of the objectives at the bottom, they're quite evenly spread out. And that's kind of what we wanted, to reflect the different play styles of people. But we had the problem that sometimes nothing is relevant. We have a lot of objectives in the game. We could always have more, but we can't handle every single scenario, at least not at the moment. In fact, because of the cooldown system, sometimes something that would be relevant is no longer relevant because you're just making the same mistakes. Well, not mistakes, but like you're not driving that well in particular ways, and you should be getting that, but then it just gets boring. So we had to accept that sometimes nothing will be relevant, or like you'll get something that's not exact, but it's a procedurally generated system, so it can't be perfect. All right, just to summarize the structure. So at the beginning of the race, we determine trigger points according to their race length. When we hit one of those trigger points, we update the relevance criteria, all of them, and we sort the list. We pick the most relevant objective. We determine a target for it with the current race data. The player either passes or fails the objective, and then we reduce the relevance for it for subsequent races. Obviously, this is a very simplified thing. There's way more to it, but this is, the very basic game loop of the system. All right, so speech cues. I want to take a moment to discuss the speech cues we have. Like for me, this feature really brings everything together. It makes it feel like something that genuinely fits in our game and in real life, rather than just like a simple system or like set of quests. So our talented dialogue designer, Daniel Curtis, created speech cues for every single objective. He worked closely with the VIP talent for our engineer, Mark Priestley, to determine what would be said in relevant situations. And I want to say Mark was part of the McLaren team that won the World Championship with Lewis Hamilton back in 2008. And I just think it's really cool that we can have him as our engineer. So in real life, you don't quite receive an objective from, I don't know, somebody and later hear, ooh, objective completed or something like that. No, like we wanted something that was sort of authentic. So for example, you might hear your engineer say, oh, mate, you've been stuck behind this guy for too long. And you know what? I shouldn't try to replicate it. I think Mark does it best. And I have a few cues here to illustrate my point. So you have this objective, which is just spend less time off track.
Right, focus please. I know you've been off track a couple of times, but that's not important anymore. Let's move forward and try and keep the next few nice and tidy.
Avoiding notable collisions.
I'd love to see a bit of aggression, but not like this, mate. Come on, let's keep it clean.
And then passing an objective.
Oh, mate, great stuff. You hit that target. That sets us up nicely for the rest of this race.
Failing one.
Okay, mate, we didn't get what we needed there, I'm afraid. But head down, chin up, and let's focus on the rest of the race.
And then finally, when an objective gets postponed, in this case, because of the safety car.
Okay, just follow the safety car. Don't worry about the target now.
Right. So, I mean, I felt like the speech cues, definitely make it clear that these scenarios can happen in real life. Like the engineers talk to the drivers all the time and gives them targets. That part really made the feature, how they put it, like feel premium to me. Before it just felt like some debug system that we made. Once those went in, it actually felt like a feature all of a sudden. And just a recap of the advice I've given throughout the talk. First one is write clean, robust, and extendable code. This is probably the most important out of all of them. Especially if you work in a company for a long time, you're gonna end up going into somebody else's code, trying to change things up, rewrite it, update it. It's such a pain when the code is not clean for yourself and for other people. You want to make it robust so it doesn't break the game, and you also want to make it extendable, especially if it's a big game, one that updates itself constantly like ours. There will come a time when you want to reuse a system, extend what it does, and so on. Next up is the plan for edge cases early. So as I showed before, the disruptions. Is that okay? That's okay. So when you work on a video game, you have so many different teams, so many different disciplines. Teamwork is crucial. Next one is user error is inevitable but manageable. And finally, be willing to give up on completed work. Those are just some tips that I kind of, things I have understood on my career path after I've graduated, and like things I would have liked to know, I guess, before going into my first job. Thank you very much.